Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Health Freedom Doctor podcast. And we are recording this live in the Assembly, the Port City Pioneer. And we have a special guest today. He is Chris Brandlin, all the way from the state of Nevada. He is an attorney as well as many other things. I've been following him through social media and have heard his name dropped many times within the carnivore and metabolic health space. And excited to have you here, Chris.
Well, it's a pleasure. I'm glad. Thank you for the invite.
Yes, absolutely. So this interview is going to be a little different than what we've had before. We've we've often talked with people that are professionals within the professional medical doctors within the health space, and I just want to preface this up front. This is not a well. Number one, Chris is running. He just won his primary in District 42, if I'm not mistaken, in the state of Nevada.
Correct.
And you are pursuing to fill that seat in the state assembly, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Correct. I'll be part of this Nevada state legislature once elected, and I'm probably the only candidate. Even though there's other doctor incumbents, I'm probably the only candidate that's actually focusing on public health and wellness.
That is amazing. Well, I just want to start off by saying that this is not a standard political discussion. This is a pioneer conversation. I just want to state that for the audience. This man has been trailblazing, just blazing a trail as a leader within the metabolic health space, as well as other spaces. And so we're just grateful and honored to have you present here today, Chris.
Well, thank you.
You bet. Starting off, let's get a little about your history, about how you even came to the mission that you're on. Who were you before carnivore, and what did life, health, and energy look like?
Certainly. And by the way, there's also, even though I'm not a medical doctor, I'm a research doctor, but I got my PhD in
Yes.
public health, so that's my main focus. So there's a reason why I came back to health. So I've been a licensed attorney for 15 years, but before this, I came from the health and fitness industry. During college, I was a very competitive wrestler during high school and then college and law school. I was a fitness trainer, but then going into law school, I wanted to take it to a next level. That actually went into all natural bodybuilding and triathlons. And I did this to actually ran my own business as a fitness trainer, which actually paid for my law school, did very well. But I did very well in all natural bodybuilding and I did ketogenic diets back then. I worked with a registered dietitian who only worked with all natural bodybuilders. And what he did is he did carb cycling, which basically you're eating very low, like zero carbs or very low carbohydrates, just a little bit of vegetables for a couple days, and you're just doing mainly just meats and fats. And then every third or fourth day, you would replenish on carbohydrates. And his kind of main recommendation, which is very common in like the CrossFit and bodybuilding industry, is sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes is kind of like the cleanest, kind of like a starchy carbohydrate you could have to kind of replenish. But so when I was in college, I was a fraternity president, so I celebrated quite a bit too. So, even though I was a fitness trainer, I basically was running a fraternity, so I was throwing parties every week. So, I was a 200-pound powerlifter. I never taken any steroids, but I was eating 6 or 7,000 calories a day. I was just lifting heavy, and I was just drinking any. My diet back then was in college was basically chicken, rice, and tequila. So that was the typical, and I make that transparent. But when I got into law school, I went complete straight edge, didn't drink or smoke, and I wanted to get in the best shape of my life. I want to just be very focused. So I was like, if I'm going to go to law school, I actually finally got my act together. I was like, I got into a law school. Let's just focus on doing well, but I want to keep my body healthy. It's going to keep my mind healthy. I already knew that, whatever you put inside your mouth is going to affect you head to toe. So I was actually Mr. Los Angeles bodybuilding champion, all natural 2010, Mr. Southern California Naturals 2010, and also Mr. Arizona Naturals 2010. So I did very well, passed the bar exam, and I was keeping my health. But then 5 years later, after I was practicing law, this is what brought me back to health. For some reason, I always woke up first thing in the morning and I felt really sick. I was like, what the hell is wrong with me? Like, I can't wake up in the morning and I'm just, I call it the autoimmune umbrella of problems. Basically, you
Mm.
wake up with chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, Hashimoto's, like eczema and all that. You're like, what the hell is going on with you? And I had no idea what was going on. I was traveling right before that, But I made the biggest mistake by going to conventional doctors because I never went to the doctors before this Dr. Bradley. I basically went to the doctors for a lot of broken bones and stitches because I'm an adrenaline junkie. I still am an adrenaline junkie. So that was my previous experience. But then I finally went to a doctor for not feeling good. I was like, this is not,
Mm.
I just turned 30. What is going on with me? So, anyways, instead of kind of like, finding out the root cause of what's making me feel sick, he's like, you probably just got a gut infection. You probably got some infection. So, I'm going to put you on a round of laxatives, corticosteroids, and antibiotics. And that's
Mm.
like a cocktail for disaster for your gut. So, I didn't even talk any about the diet. I wasn't eating like a sad diet, but I was still including some starches, and I didn't even eat too many grains. I think if I ever ate, it was just a little bit of rice. But anyways, the pharmaceuticals, he had me cycle them like every couple weeks for 14 months straight. Him and other
Mm.
doctors that kind of worked in conjunction. And even though I had, let's just say when you're kind of sick with like autoimmune problems, you maybe have like some digestive issues, but I didn't have any pain. After those
Okay.
pharmaceuticals, I was crapping blood. It
Mm.
basically incinerated my intestines. Got so bad in 2017, a year later, after about 14 months of getting put on pharmaceuticals, because I think I was started on the pharmaceuticals February 2016, and I went nonstop until like April 2017, where they had to refer me to a surgeon because piece of my intestine, my sigmoid colon, which is the end or part of your intestines, as you probably know, got very inflamed. And they said, you know what? It's very inflamed. We did all the testing. You may need a partial removal. When they referred me to a surgeon, he said, hey, if I just remove the 6 inches, you're gonna feel so much better. It was kind of like, and when you're very kind of when you're in a lot of pain, you're very desperate, but you're also very gullible. Okay. And you probably can recognize this with a lot of people in the carnivore. Like you think you're like, hey, if someone tells you you're gonna get better, thank God, please get me better because, going from like a best athlete of my life to getting like kind of like I was kind of like stuck in bed most of the time and barely able to move. I kind of threw out my dating and social life. It sucked. So I was like, you know
Mhm.
what? He's like, hey, it's gonna be minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery. We'll cut a couple of holes, and basically you'll be in and out of the hospital. Okay, probably like 1 or 2 days, and you're gonna feel a lot better afterwards. And I was, so gullible. I went on, and that's where it got even worse because right when they put me under the knife, April of 2017, I woke up while they're cutting open my intestines because they didn't give me proper anesthesia. So that's probably why I have a lot of pain tolerance. I felt probably some of the worst and
Yeah.
had problems putting me back to sleep because when I woke up, I was in so much pain. It was so hard to go back to bed. They gave me extra morphine and like tramadol, like basically to like to put me back to sleep. And then I was just overdrugged for a couple days in the hospital. I don't even remember like in the hospital, like where they're talking to me. They're like, hey, we're releasing you. I'm like, I don't even think I took a crap yet. I mean, you want to make sure this thing's working before you release me? And they're like,
Yeah.
no, you'll be fine. Just go home and and we'll call and check up you in a couple weeks. And then about 2 weeks later, I was having problem. I was actually in more pain after the surgery. I was so restrictive because it developed a lot of scar tissue. And then all of a sudden, right where they cut me open, I'm not sure if you know laparoscopic surgeries. It's where we do like small holes, but there's always one main incision. So it was like 2 inches below my belly button. They did a 2 or 3 inch incision to kind of do the main kind of like, the anastomosis site where they kind of like cut out the sigmoid and they attach your kind of like your descending colon to the end of your colon, basically. So that portion where they cut me open, the main incision got so inflamed it grew up to the size of a grapefruit. Dr. Bradley, do you remember the movie The Alien from like the 1980s, where like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
guys like what? Yeah, but you see like a big
Like,
bulge like about to pop out. That's what it
yeah.
looked like, 2 inches below my belly. And I was like, "What the f you
Wow.
see?" And all of a sudden, so I basically, I text the doctor and I show like the photos, and it was like a humongous grapefruit. He's like, "Get to the ER ASAP." So they had to cut me back open and no anesthesia. They just injected some lidocaine, and I was fully awake while they cut me back open to drain out all the infection, and then they just stuck gauze in it. They're like, "Hey, we don't want to seal it back up because it's a breeding ground for infection if we just seal it back up. So just change the gauze 3 times a day. It'll eventually heal up." And then 2 weeks later, or actually it was 2 to 3 weeks later, same exact thing happened. It got so infected that they had to bring me back. And then after that, I remember I was trying to manage to keep another infection. I was doing a little bit of fasting. I was just kind of like eating very, low residue foods. I wasn't eating any sugar, but I was still eating a little bit of like really cooked vegetables, and I was still eating some plants. I remember I was trying to do coconut oil, and coconut oil was making me worse. Because I think when your body is very inflamed, that's where you have to do a full on elimination diet.
Yeah.
So my Hail Mary, Dr. Bradley, was I went back to the doctor after having complications. He said it was the end of the summer because I was struggling for all summer that year. He said, "You know what? You're not getting much better. I think we just got to remove the rest of your intestines." And that is where I woke up and I was like, "Holy
Whoa.
crap. I just got so much better by going down the wrong rabbit hole of like conventional medicine." And
Yeah.
now, like, I wish I'd never taken these pharmaceuticals because that's what led to the surgery. It wasn't like feeling sick. It's because you guys wrecked my intestines. And so I basically gave my middle finger to the doctor, and I was like, "I'm gonna get this better." So I did some extensive testing, which did show Lyme disease and some co-infection. So I was fighting off some infections, but I don't think that's still not to this day. That's not the true cause of my problem. So my problem was overtaking a lot of dangerous pharmaceuticals in combination. I
Yeah.
think some pharmaceuticals can be taken short term, like like in the need of like sepsis. But if you're taking antibiotics and routinely and changing them 14 months with corticosteroids and laxatives, your immune system just goes to
Y
crap.
yeah,
So
definitely.
what I did to save my life is I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna save my intestines. I do not want to remove because if they remove all my intestines, guess
Yeah.
what? I may have to live with it.
Man, that's such a limiting
Yeah,
condition for
I
somebody
have some
who's
friends. Either they wear a colostomy bag or they basically have to go to the bathroom like 30 or 40 times a day. Because they don't have large intestine, kind of like do the storage before it empties. So I was like, I'm going to save the rest of my intestines. What I did is I did a 10-day water fast, but I was looking out to refeed. And I think this is the most important thing because you look at to what you refeed after the fast. I think the refeed is the most important. I've done
yes.
short fast before this, like a couple days. I'm like, I'm gonna do extended fast because I'm gonna heal my intestines and see what I could do. I looked in the gap to the GAPS diet. If you're familiar with the GAPS diet by
Yes, I
Dr.
am.
Natasha McKemmel McBride from I think it's from the 80s actually, 80s or 90s. Basically, it's starting off as bone broth, and then it's kind of like it is elimination diet, and then you introduce other foods to see what your body can handle. Okay, and like basically, you're just kind of doing bone broth, and you're doing well cooked meats first, and then you slowly introduce like cooked vegetables a little bit, right? So what I did, I was like, you know what? I wasn't sure to do the bone broth. I just know that like meat is actually one of the things only tolerating. So because sometimes I would eat meat and then I eat vegetables that I'd had problems with the vegetables. I'm like, I'm only going to eat just meat to refeed. So I did a slow roasted steak on my first day after the 10-day. I pushed it the 10 days and I felt amazing. And I did that for the
Mhm.
next days and my gut completely felt healed. And I actually had a normal bowel for the first time in like 2 years. I was like, holy
Wow.
SHI. I was like, I
Yeah.
can't believe
No pun
I
intended
just
there.
and then, like, all, like, the incision where I was getting very infected and very inflamed, yeah, almost going back to normal, it just had some scar tissue. I was like, "Holy crap." I was like, "I healed this. This is so much better." I didn't wanna go back to the doctor, but whenever I try to reintroduce foods, Dr. Bradley, like when I try to introduce some vegetables, even as well cooked, or even certain plant oils, like those, I can handle a little bit of like olive, but like maybe a little bit of avocado, but a lot of other oils I cannot handle. Okay.
Yeah.
And then I was like, this is kind of weird. And so I reached out to a couple of friends because most of my friends are in the fitness industry because I was in the fitness industry all college and law school, even my best friend, Brian. I'm like, I was like, Brian, I called him up. I was like, this is the craziest thing. Like, I'm better because he was checking up on me, but I can only eat meat. I'm not sure, like, can I live like this? Because I never heard of the carnivore diet before that. Even though I was a dietetic technician, so which is a step below a registered dietitian. I did that after passing the bar exam. I was like, they don't teach you any of this. So he's like, you know what? There's actually a group like that does only meat. I think it's like the carnivore diet or something. You should probably look into that. I mean, that what I heard, like people like live long lives and they only eat meat and they're actually better. So
Yeah.
I basically connected with Michaela Peterson before she became popular. I followed her YouTubes. She gave me a call from her cell phone, gave me some kind of pointers. Then I followed up with Dr. Baker. And this is
Yes.
actually before Dr. Baker went right on like the Rogan podcast too, because it was right before he became popular. It's like, I think it was the end of 2018. And then I decided to go over to Budapest, Hungary, because Dr. Sophia Clemens out of the Paleo Medicina Clinic is one of the only doctors that did like kind of extensive clinical trials on basically putting a lot of conditions in inflammatory bowel disease in remission by just doing a basically ketogenic, like zero carb animal based diet. And
Yes.
I Skyped with her. I went over there for about 10 days. I felt even better because I was very strict when I went over there. So when I came back, it kind of changed everything where even though I've been an attorney for like, 6 or 7 years, I wanted to focus back on health. This is kind of the wake up call from God to bring me back to health. So then
Yeah.
you decided to get my a PhD in public health and public policy going into like 2021 because I spoke out against the vaccine mandates. They basically tried to ban me from being a licensed attorney, and I fought against the complaints. And I was like, I'm going to get my PhD, but I want to run at a congressional level because I noticed that our entire healthcare system is no longer really a healthcare system. It's a sick care system. I just did
That's
some
right.
work on that these pharmaceutical companies have so much control, not only over our future doctors because they fund all the pharmaceutical, these medical institutions, but they're
Yes.
funding over 2/3 of Congress and state and
Hmm.
federal. So you can see how all these policies come into play because it's influence. So I went down the right rabbit hole, but I actually pulled up all the data and the statistics and everything as a research doctor. I'm like, you know what? I already have kind of a platform. I'm going to focus on public health, but I'm going to focus on other issues, including, public safety and education because it's something I always admire. But I basically have been like, since I started doing some work with Dr. Shafee and Dr. Kiltz and a few others, I was helping out the carnivore community for the past, 4 to 5 years. So I decided I might as well just be the carnivore lawyer. So I trademarked
Yeah.
that. But yeah, but now I'm becoming the first carnivore kind of politician. I guess you could put it that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love it. And in here, ruminant meat, water, and salt only is what we consider in the Pioneer Assembly as the Lion's Kitchen Protocol.
That's the only thing I can
And
do. I'm allergic to dairy, and I can only handle maybe duck eggs, but I don't like even doing like duck or ostrich eggs. I'm like, let's just stick with only meat. So
yeah,
yeah,
well, you are the only one to stand in the Supreme Court that has actually done the Lion's Kitchen Protocol. So I think that's pretty fascinating.
actually, one of the few attorneys in the entire United States that's
That even
licensed with the Supreme Court of the United States. I actually had to do a like additional background for like a couple years. So yeah,
yes,
and I even had to pass the Nevada bar exam. So now it's California, Nevada, Texas, and DC, and I'm just
I
opening up
saw
my
that
own.
DC just recently.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Congratulations on that.
well, I represent the American Rancher Alliance, and I want to do like some antitrust actions against some of these big four packers like Tyson, JBS, Cargill, and National Beef, which are
Mhm.
which were tied to the pharmaceutical companies too, because they have the similar board of directors. People don't realize that the same board of directors for these major corporations are the same board of directors for these pharmaceutical companies. So it's a revolving cycle. You got the
Yes.
crap food to make you sick, and then you get sick and you go into the pharmaceuticals for the rest of your life. It's like a nonstop kind of like profit revenue that they go for these. I don't.
Yeah.
Someone needs to speak
Well,
out, and I think we need our voices heard at higher
well,
level. That's what I'm here.
you are definitely you definitely have the microphone, sir, and your message is being received.
Yeah.
As as an attorney,
I am getting a lot of pushback, as you can imagine, because even though I'm
I
in
could imagine.
well, let's just say that the majority of the Democrats are the ones that kind of like propose the vaccines that are kind of like, like pro-vax and all that. So if you actually looked at all the data to see who is pro-vax and anti-vax, or just
Mhm.
pro Big Pharma and anti Big Pharma, it's actually the most of the Republicans are kind of speaking out, like saying, "Hey, well, they're the ones kind of opposing." But there is a fair share of Republicans who are still getting a lot of money from pharmaceutical companies,
Yes.
and they don't.
Yes.
And there's a kind of a loophole that you can start seeing the money funneling if you follow their donations, and it's public records. The donations that they get, a lot of the ones that come indirectly from the pharmaceutical companies, are coming from political action committees. It's PAC,
Mhm.
and you got some very, very wealthy PACs that can hand some major money to
Major
these
money.
candidates. And guess what? A lot of these PACs get a crap load of money from Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson Johnson, and whatnot. So,
Yeah. Well, as an attorney, how do you read the legal architecture of the current food and pharmaceutical regulatory system?
and this is something I need to kind of manage. And this is why I focused to go back to state assembly because I was originally considering
Yeah,
running for the House. And I think I may have explained that too in our email exchange, Bradley.
you did.
Is that like, originally when I met with Bobby Kennedy and his team back in like last January, so I connected with Team Kennedy in 2024 before, during, and after he joined Trump's kind of like, kind of a coalition, we'll call it that. So if you remember, Kennedy was running for president, and then in
Yep.
Arizona he shook hands with President Trump and kind of like joined the alliance because he knew that he was going to have some better opportunities if Trump got elected. So, anyways, I connected with them right when I was kind of like halfway through. I had finished all my coursework for my PhD, but I reached out to them through different kind of connections. I was like, hey, I mentioned to my colleague that actually ran for states for Senate or U.S. Senate. So I had a couple of colleagues that ran for Senate, and they were like, hey, you're the one attorney that's involved in health, and you got a really interesting background. You should consider running at a congressional level or at least at a state level. So they connected me with Team Kennedy. They basically invited me over to come to the inauguration, and then Bobby Kennedy, RFK Jr., I call him Bobby Kennedy. He had a separate Maha ball because they have these inaugural balls. So DC inauguration, it's like a 5-day party, if you probably ever can imagine. Even though it's 16-degree weather outside, it's still a 5-day party.
Yeah.
So all these different senators and different political action committees and just all these and people involved, especially with the cabinet, they throw these separate kind of inaugural balls like 5 days a row. But I went to the Maha ball, which was Kennedy's ball, and then Trump had a separate like Starlight ball. But that's where I got to meet a lot of people. I think Russell Brand was there, Rob Schneider, I like him, and then Tom Massey too. So I mean, he's kind of like twofold with the Republican Party because he's got a love-hate relationship with, and now he lost his kind of reelection seat too. But I actually had a good chance to speak with him because he's one of the few congressmen that are actually speaking out to save the farmers. People don't realize that. So
Yeah.
he was one of the only congressmen to speak out about like the farm bill, and he's actually the one that proposed that too.
That's
But
right.
we're talking about a couple other congressmen talking out. So they originally said like run for congressional, but then we had a better focus like last year that public health. If you know the Constitution, the 10th Amendment to the Constitution, 1791, the founding fathers said powers not designated to the federal government are left to the states, and they listed out some itemized powers. Public health is a state police power. Bobby Kennedy and the HHS, they set forth the guidelines. It's up to the states on whether or not they want to follow. And that's why only 8 out of the entire 50 states have banned lab grown meat. I am trying to make Nevada the ninth state.
Yes. We just recently there was the world's largest manufacturing of lab grown meat. It recently shut down. They shut it down, but was right here in Mooresville, just outside of Charlotte.
Oh, yeah, that's
And
right.
yeah, yeah, pretty crazy. I mean, yeah. Well, grateful that we had the change that we had in 2020 for sure, and to see the work that's being done to turn things around and get things on the right foot. What legal tools exist that most health freedom advocates don't know about?
So one thing, if you're going to be ever running for any kind of state or federal office, you're going to become a lawmaker. So this is
Yes.
where, even though I hate most attorneys and I definitely hate a lot of politicians, I even tell some of the doctors that kind of like, hey, just bash doctors. I don't bash doctors. I just bash the conventional doctors who reach for the prescription pad. I actually am the attorney for Dr. Like, I'm actually I give the legal seminars for the Kilt's Mighty Tribe. I've been doing work
Hmm.
for Chafee for a couple of years, and I basically give all legal advice to all the health coaches that come out of the program. So I love those that I love the, let's say, the alternative are kind of like, maybe a holistic or kind of like health doctors, actual health doctors, because conventional doctors are the ones that reach for the prescription pad. But I always tell the doctors I hate most attorneys because I do think most attorneys are going to burn in hell. I don't trust a lot of them. And the ones that reported me, and by the way, the ones that reported me to the state bar for speaking out against the vaccine mandates were actually attorneys. So they didn't like that. And most of them are pro-vax. I hate most attorneys. But anyways, you do need a lawmaker. Okay, you need someone that like ingrained and kind of studied the law, or at least have some kind of familiarity with how to propose a legislative bill. Okay, and this
Hmm.
is how you can start making changes. For a fact, a lot of the blue states are kind of instigating these meatless Mondays and meatless Fridays because they're trying to throw more towards the plant-based kind of system for the schools. But the problem is, when you start taking out meat out of these school lunches, these kids are you could have an overweight kid that's actually malnourished. People don't realize that. So a lot of
Yes.
these kids are like, dealing with type 2 diabetes. They're so
Hmm.
malnourished and sick. They're not properly feeding right. And when they're feeding, especially a lot of these foods, especially like this fake plant-based crap that's got so many ingredients you can't even name, you're not bringing them back to our ancestral levels. And, if you try to take away meat from the menus, for people, for something we've been eating for 2.5 million years, right? I think if I got that correct, something that was meant for survival as apex predators, as my client Dr. Shafee likes to put it,
Hmm.
that is when it becomes a problem. And this is where, we're not. I think Dr. Ken Berry said it the best in his like in a film is that we know, people call it the agricultural revolution. It's not the agricultural revolution. He calls it the agricultural de-evolution. Basically we've been declining. And when you see it, like the last 50 or 60 years, especially since they were started reducing animal-based fats, these low-fat
Yeah.
this, you've
Hmm.
seen people get so sick and so overweight. And actually, they did it in the 80s. That was the biggest part to reduce the cardiovascular heart disease, but it actually increased since then. Since you so I'm like, guys,
Yeah.
that is not the problem. It is sugar and a lot of this other artificial crap that you're kind of like throwing into foods.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes, I completely, and it's interesting the timeline on that too, with the food guidelines coming out then, and just shortly thereafter, statin drugs were introduced, and
Yeah.
you
I
can
they've
see.
seen all the problems with statins too, and there's some higher ups. I'm not gonna name them specifically. They actually gave me a lot of respect after I won the primary, and I'm gonna meet with them again. But they
Yeah,
really hated when I talked about like the fact that most. I just said a simple statement. They all bashed me. They're like, "Oh, Chris is just an anti-doctor. He's a conspiracy theorist. I don't care about his
no,
education, like his variety
yeah,
the crazy mother effer because he is basically bad. I was like, no, all I said is too many doctors reach for the prescription pad prematurely. And that is the very broad but fair and accurate statement. I think anybody could realize that, correct?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's you know, what is it, like 90 million prescriptions for statin medications? We have, speaking more to the health crisis in our nation, almost a third of the nation is considered pre-diabetic at least. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, and the children is
And
probably the biggest concerning because I think that's
yeah, the
well,
increase in our kids.
that's why if you see me doing the reels, like I did like fitness challenges with the Boy Scouts, and I actually did like, challenges against some of the local high schools here in Las Vegas, Bishop Gorman, the Centennial like push-up contest to show them I'm still gonna keep up with them. I'm actually gonna be doing some more now I'm actually going into Ninja Warrior because I'm a wild card contestant for American Ninja Warrior, which I never thought I would do at age 40. I turned 41 on Thursday. But anyways, I'm trying to that's why I tell people like your age doesn't define you. You define
That's
your
right.
age. And that the probably some of the people that made me kind of go into fitness were actually ripped at like age 70. And this is what I want to be when we get older. So this is what I'm trying to focus on is if you actually have a really healthy society and a healthy kind of cabinet or any kind of an administration, you're going to have the most productive like society and cabinet. When you
That's
think about
right.
it, economically, it's going to work out indirectly.
Yeah, and, kinda going back to the kids here, with education, with the meatless Mondays and Fridays, if we actually started feeding them good quality nutrition, can you imagine how that would impact their knowledge and their ability to learn and seeing all this increase, you know?
And this is a very fair point, and this is actually has to do also with the low fat craze that kind of started all this because people don't realize your animal based fats are they're such a great necessity for kind of our existence when you think about it because not only do they balance our hormonal functions, and this is why I call it the beta meals, kind of like fluctuating out, like all these soy boys that are kind of like eating these very plant-based low-fat diets and their testosterone is just plummeting, but they're
Yeah.
also their cognitive function is just not accurate. So that's where the studies have shown that people that are developing dementia or even just autism like at a young age because it's all related it's
Mhm.
all about what you're kind of putting in your body and when you start decreasing the amount of fat that actually helps you kind of like with your cognitive function and memory short and long term and you're kind of poisoning it especially with pharmaceuticals not only you're going to be developing dementia at an older age but if you're doing it as a younger age they're not going to develop properly this is why these young children are developing like osteoporosis and type 2 diabetes mentally they cannot function in Nevada I can't blatantly say we're the third dumbest state in the entire country, but we're ranked 48th out of 50th in education, especially when it comes to all the testing scores. So our children are really failing, and those are, that's why it's such important to me is because the children are our future leaders. If you want to
That's
see
right.
if our country is going to continue or the world's going to continue, you got to
Mhm.
make sure that you have a healthy and bright future, right?
That's right. North Carolina is not too far off, I imagine, from that
I
state.
should probably look up. I mean, I My brothers, I came from California like 7 years ago or 6 or 7 years ago. And I still kind of go back there to visit family. And I'm still licensed in California. But most all my family is over there. My brother is like a vice principal at like an elementary school, and I always tell him like, I was like, he's like, yeah, well, Nevada, we're better than guys. Like, you're not too far behind actually, Nevada, California. And if I'm aware, California are also forced to have tampon machines in the little boys' restroom, so you're already screwing up the boys at an early age.
Yeah. Hey, I want to turn a little next couple questions here to the campaign. And what was the platform that resonated with District 42 with you?
I focus on the three issues of public health, public safety, and education, and I think it was a good wake up call because there's a lot of, let's just say most of my district, we're gonna call it West Las Vegas, okay? West of the Strip, up until like Summerlin, then it goes in a different district. So it's mainly the Spring Valley area, and most of those families, they're not right or left; they're right in the middle. So when I say right or left, actually, the majority of this district is actually nonpartisans, and I'm probably
Hmm.
one of the unique Republicans, that I am focusing on the middle ground issues because a lot of them focus on immigration, like taxation, housing plays a
Sure.
role too, but when I speak with any independent, they wanna know 3 things, okay? Is my family and my kids healthy? Are my family and my kids safe? And do my children have a future? Okay? That's 3 things, and that's what I'm focusing on, public health, public safety, and education, and I think that resonated that they also saw me, so I don't have any name recognition. This is my first time running for anything. The lady that I ran against, she doesn't really have much of a background in education, but she's kind of like an activist that's ran 3 or 4 different times before. She never won, but when you run for like, any kind of election, you get your name identity. I didn't have any name identity. They just thought me, a lot of people didn't even realize I was an attorney. They were like, probably one of the few attorneys with a PhD. They thought me I was just a crazy health nut. And so what I actually did, and you could probably see the reels, is instead of paying door walkers, you could pay young kids door walkers to knock on doors, leave some literature, and a lot of times they don't even knock on the doors; they just leave the literature. Like, here's vote for Christopher Brandlin. I personally went out like every Saturday and Sunday. I would do a couple hours, maybe during the week, like on Mondays, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But on Saturdays and Sundays, I did 5 or 6 hour days. I did this like the last 5 or 6 weeks where I went out. I didn't give a shit if it was 113 degrees outside. I don't get sunburned. Not only am I Italian, but I don't take any seed oils. So
There you
anyway,
go.
yeah. So I went outside like over a hot day, and I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna film." Like, look, I'm looking at the temperature. You would see no one outside because it was too hot. But I personally went to the entire community, and I actually walked like I think almost 5,000 doors, just in like the last month. So that's what got, that was for mainly the Republicans, but they saw that, we've never seen a candidate go out crazy like this to go out and entire the community. And then they saw me working out with the Boy Scouts, which was now known as Scouting America. And they saw me working out with the high school students. They're like, this is not the typical attorney. He's actually really doing things with the community. So yeah, I think that's what probably what made my constituents, my voters, resonate with them is that I was probably one kind of was just doing more of the grassroots traditional approach. Because right
Yes.
now it's all about the establishment politicians. I'm gonna say like they basically do all this for their endorsements and they just get their biggest billboards and all that, and marketing can
Yeah.
play a role. But no, I had to go
It's
like
definitely, when you think about society today and everything's moving more digital and people are craving that relational connection too. And
yeah,
that's always been the case. I mean, that's grassroots, but even today, I think even more that, "Oh, this man showed up on my door? Who
yeah, or
who
I
is this guy? Who
invite
does that?" You know?
Even though I don't drink coffee, I'd like to, meet the candidate at coffee night, kind of about
Yeah.
for everybody for a couple hours.
It's
But I'm
like
like,
it's like Dr. Ovadia. I think the biggest thing that impressed me about Dr. Ovadia, the cardiac surgeon, was he actually sat down and had a meal with his patients.
yeah,
Like
and
that.
he was my favorite podcast last year too. So that was
Yeah,
fun. So and I actually,
yeah.
it's kind of funny because the one of the ladies who has a lot of power, one of her relatives is a cardiologist.
Mhm.
She hates the idea of only eating meat because most cardiologists, as you know, and then,
Yeah.
Dr. Nidhi is like a cardiac surgeon. His focus on what is his book? Stay off my operating table. Like
Yes.
he's focused on what I'm focusing, which is my additional slogan. In addition to make Nevada healthy again, and I still have some people with Team Kennedy working with me because we're trying to do that in the individual states. Make America healthy again is the kind of the motto for the entire country, but it's up to the individual, the states to follow because of that 10th Amendment, as I referenced earlier. So that's why Dr. Ken Berry is doing Make Tennessee Healthy Again. And this is what I am leading, and I basically coined it, Make Nevada Healthy Again. But what I'm also focusing on, hey, I can't just blatantly say, let's take down Big Pharma because that's not going to resonate well with the voters. Okay. You
Correct.
have to bring them
Yeah.
into the middle ground and say, hey, let's focus on prevention before prescription or prevention over prescription, however you want to reference it. Because if we get your children healthier at an early age and you get them to better lifestyle and diet, they'll never need to take any medications. And if you don't have to see your doctor quite often, that's actually a good thing because that means you're feeling well. You can do your routine lab test if you want, but that's a different kind of situation.
Yes. Well, I tell you, here in Wilmington, we have a very unique situation. We have 2 hospitals that have applied, to move into the area. We only have 1 hospital, Novant Health, and they're not up to standard as far as reliability and standard of care, in my opinion. And there's 2 hospitals that have applied to come in, and the university system is looking to establish a medical school in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Nice.
Yeah. So, what does a health freedom advocate say to the people making the decision before the framework
Well, first of
is
all,
locked in?
I'm actually gonna follow some of Bobby Kennedy's, but I'm gonna probably make it, more realistic. And this is what the goal is to get to a federal congressional level. This is my first rodeo, I'll call it, even though
Yeah.
by the way, I'm doing my 3rd bull riding contest in August, and I never thought right when I turned 40, I started doing more. I've been skydiving for years anyways, but I started doing more skydiving. I started doing more wrestling contests, mixed martial arts, and then I also did 2 professional bull riding contests. I'm gonna do a 3rd one because I want to make the 8-second mark because I want to qualify for the championships. But anyways, one thing I'm gonna say is that before going to a congressional level, I think we need to kind of have people become more aware. I want more transparency, but the problem is a lot of these parents or any kind of
Mhm.
even if they don't have any children, they're not fairly educated. That's why they're easier to manipulate. And I don't want to say the term persuade because it's let's look at the reality, Dr. Bradley. When you see some of these pharmaceutical ads, they manipulate because you'll see them
They do.
smiling and like, oh, you see them struggling, and all of a sudden they show the medication, you see them smiling in the families, and then they'll read off the side effects as quickly as possible, and they'll speak probably 300 or 400 words per minute. Like, your side effects include, chronic diarrhea, impotence. I'm like, wait, am I going to get impotence from this from taking something from my blood, and they don't realize that, the side effects, you can do more harm than good is another way to say it. And I want people to recognize that there's healthier alternatives. And I really am hoping, I'm glad that Bobby Kennedy is trying to force these medical schools, if they want to get some funding from HHS, because that's what HHS can do. They can
Yeah.
I think one of my campaign manager and friend Ryan kind of
Leverage the federal purse, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Dangle the carrot. So that's what he says. Just
Yes.
the carrot. Hey, do you want the money? This is what you're gonna have to do, right? So that's
Yeah.
what he's gonna do is basically, hey, we're gonna kind of reduce all the funding in these medical institutions. We know you're getting most of the money from the pharmaceutical companies, regardless, but we still provide some funding because we have to as a federal agency. But if you want to keep the funding, you have to spend more time educating your doctors on nutrition. So here's another question, Dr. Bradley. Said this to Dr. Shafee when I did a podcast with Dr. Shafee 3 years ago. Do you know how much the average medical doctor spends on nutrition in medical
The average
school? Like total.
Oh, it's like I'm gonna say maybe, well, I believe the stat is about 25% of medical schools even offer some sort of nutritional coursework, but I would say
That's
6
a
to
good
9
point.
hours 6 to
Yeah.
9 hours
Yeah,
of
exactly. So that's probably
yeah,
a more fair. The most prestigious medical schools, it showed a study, but this is outdated. It's probably lesser now. It showed like a maximum of 19.6 hours on an average at the most prestigious. But most medical schools, Dr. Barry told me about 1 or 2 years ago in our podcast, is that he's like, you know what? I don't even. It wasn't even close to that. He's like, we'd be lucky if we did 10 or 12 hours because I think we had one semester, and it was just 1 hour a week for like 8 to 10 weeks or
yeah,
that. He's like, so at most, yeah, you're probably accurate. But when you think about how many hours they're spending in medical schools, and including all their time in residencies and clinical rotations, it's a lot longer, and the majority and the bulk of their curriculum is all pharmacology. So for
That's
every
right.
problem, there's a pill or there's an injection, and that's your
That's right.
or surgeries, and they'll kind of have, but that's kind of limited. The pharmacology is the bulk study of all the curriculum for all medical institutions.
Yes. Yeah. I highly agree with that. And, so how do we turn this around? We go back to Flexner back in 1910 with the centralization of healthcare in our country. That's the Flexner report of 1910 that led to the closing of 60% of the medical schools within the next 30 years, I believe it was. Medical schools closing. So beginning this, it really is just about just like how you have really built your campaign, grassroots, standing up, showing up, getting out there, and any other advice you can give to turn this thing around. Especially, if they're going to bring in a medical school here, we already have one hospital that's strictly allopathic in nature, but really, you know, uh, the rise of metabolic functional medicine is growing astronomically. I think it's somewhere around like 900% over the last couple of years. How can we turn this around and really, well, who would we how would we influence to get that change done? And it's not really saying no to the allopathic model, but really be open to maybe talking more restoration. I mean, I was having a conversation with somebody today, and if you were to seek to restore through nutrition and maybe some natural supplementation protocol, think about this: the not only the money savings, but the crisis management. The demand on this system is so heavy right now. Just on traditional healthcare. So I don't
I
know.
would focus on some simplest things. So we need to educate the people a little bit better now. I almost want
Yeah,
mandatory,
education,
like,
education, education.
programs that are kind of taught to educate every kind of family before they start going into the wrong kind of rabbit hole. As I said, is that we want to let them know, because you know what? Even in my experience, the doctor never told me about the side effects of the medications he gave me. He didn't tell
Right.
me.
Yeah.
So,
Informed consent,
that's
right.
a major problem, even though it could be like if you look up online, you're not gonna find it. So, when you're actually, going to a doctor if you're desperately sick, you just take the medication and hope to get better. And that's what a lot of people do. So, I think there needs to be a lot more transparent to discuss the side effects in great detail and the efficacy, whether or not it's actually gonna cure you or just gonna manage your problems. But I think there needs to be more outspoken kind of clinical trials and probably possibly insurance approval. That's gonna be a biggest thing, okay?
That's gonna be big. Yeah.
So one thing I propose, Dr. Brownlee, I love hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So I love that and this is actually part of my healing journey. Is that in addition to doing, a lion diet, a ketogenic animal based diet, no dairy or anything, I also started doing hyper medical grade hyperbaric oxygen therapy to basically keep the reinflammation down, because a lot of people are oxygen deprived. And if
Mhm.
you actually, that's why I kind of like, those are my two premises. I'm like, hey, meat and oxygen, like two major healing things. You don't have to take any
Yes.
kind of injections and medications. You just sit in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber that infuses more pure oxygen, medical grade oxygen. And the studies, and there's a plethora of literature that shows that people have regenerated and put a lot of conditions in remission, like serious kind of like wound healing situations too.
Mhm.
So what I want is the insurance to prove some of these kind of alternative remedies, okay? And I think if you're seeing someone who is a certified health coach, I think your insurance should approve that. And that is, if that's why I'm really promoting. I'm not sure if you're kind of working because. So wait, are you a chiropractic medicine or what's
Yeah,
going?
I'm a chiropractor and functional practitioner, yeah.
And are you kind of been working with any of the health coaches too? Like, are you thinking about maybe starting a program with them?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, because Dr.
Yeah.
Barry has like the PhD program, and Dr. Kiltz has like the Kiltz Mighty Tribe, and then but Dr. Baker's got Rivero, right?
Mhm.
I actually really recommend that. So when people are having problems, I'm like, hey, you may want to consider just working with a health coach right now. They'll still tell you to, like, please follow up with your primary care doctor, because I always tell my health coaches when I'm giving the legal seminars that you are not allowed to kind of interpret lab data. Like you can't interpret blood results as a health coach, but you
Mhm.
what you have to do is a
Again,
kind
it's
of
a chiropractor.
exactly. So
Yeah,
exactly. So what you tell them that you give them some reference points, but I think there needs to be more alternative kind of like, natural healthcare kind of solutions for the public that's made available because right now with the pharmaceutical companies taking over all of the marketing and like advertising, people do not know about that because you see pharmaceutical ads everywhere. I mean, I want to, and I do agree with Bobby Kennedy that I want to restrict, and you can do this at a state level too, to restrict the amount of advertising that pharmaceutical companies play in every individual state. If I'm going to be doing that in Nevada, I'm hoping that you and some other kind of like patriots can be doing out in North Carolina.
absolutely. Yes, definitely. Well, how can this community be a force multiplier for your work in Carson City?
Well, I think probably joining more during the campaign. I'll be honest, I don't like asking for money. I'm gonna have my other resources for money, and this is the one I work my ass off is so I can I have my own investments to
You
kind of
would you like your content, share your content, spread it that
that
way.
is probably you know what I always tell people just spread the word. Okay, if you want to support me in social media or since I just won the primary, you probably know it. Like the midterm elections is November, so it's usually like September or October is like the real crunch time that you have to focus and like I'm gonna have to be like park my butt in like Vegas 24/7 to be out to the community. But I think I'm still gonna be doing some possibly some meetups. So I always encourage people to go to meetups because I think people have a such better kind of interaction when you meet person. I think this is I think even though this digital world that we're living in now, you have all these social media platforms. I think it's a great way to kind of like enhance the communication and get connected, but nothing beats the authentic person to person kind of like in
That's
person
right.
kind of like communication. I think that's why I kind of admire people to go to Meatstock and Hack Your Health. I will be at Hack Your Health, but I think it just kind of spread the word because
Yeah.
now indirectly, if I get a lot more well known in the entire community that's indirectly known on social media, there's going to be a lot of my constituents that are kind of looking up social media. And I'm going to be trying to flip the seat of a Democrat incumbent that's been in for 6 years, but I don't want to fat bash. Let's just say that she is the opposite of health that you can ever picture. So
Yeah.
let's think of that way. So she won't be even door walking. She doesn't even look like she can walk more than a block, to be honest with you. So that's what I want people to kind of recognize and probably, but I also want people to speak out in your own individual state. So
Yeah.
if it happens to me, that's great. But you know what? If you want to spread the word, but I think I want more people speaking out and possibly running for some local offices too.
There you go.
You can change the nutrition programs for your local public schools, that would be amazing. And then this way, if you can speak out against the lab grown meat or like getting like put on your school menus for your kids, that would be amazing. If you can speak out about the fact that your kids malnourished and not getting any kind of quality meals, your individual schools and sometimes your local municipalities or your counties or your state can govern that. So as much as I speak with other people and they say, I hate politics. I don't want to do. And there are some new carnivores, Dr. Bradley, that say, isn't that he's an attorney and he's running for political office. He's running for a state legislature. He's just a typical crook. That's and they don't realize that I've been a carnivore for 8 years, longer than most people is in the carnivore community. But I came from the health and fitness industry too, and I'm still working my ASS off and I'm still training. But I want people to recognize that I'm probably the only person that's trying to get the voices heard at higher levels. That health is a major topic that's too often ignored in our society. So I encourage everybody to speak out at some kind of levels or write to your local assembly person or your local senator if you want some changes done in your schools. At least speak out or at least find a senator that you would semi trust, okay? Because a lot of them they're just taking a lot of like money in the back pocket and they're not really caring about their constituents or their people. They're more cared about people who are going to be kind of funding their wallets. Let's just say that. So I really encourage everybody in your own individual states, your counties, your cities, to reach out and probably try to make your local communities healthier because that's how the states can follow. My goal is to make Nevada healthy again. And once we can see the progress that Nevada is all of a sudden going to be one of the healthiest states, other states are probably going to follow.
Oh, yeah. That's awesome. Well, Chris, I want to thank you for coming on today and make sure to follow or at least check him out. District 42, Nevada, running for the assembly in the state of Nevada. It's so cool. And wish you well I want to congratulate you on the success that you've had, not just with this campaign, but in your life, man. You faced some adversity, and one thing that sticks out from this conversation is, well, you're driven and convicted and authentic and relational. So I think that serves you well, sir. And I want to thank you for coming into the assembly today and sharing. Certainly, we learned a lot, I would say.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Dr. Bradley. So, and you can keep in touch with me anytime.
All right. Thank you, sir. You have an amazing day.